Because this is Nerdcast.
What are you doing?
I died earlier rehearsing my lines, so I've got to start over from the save point.
Exactly how much Dark Souls 2 have you been playing?
Apparently not enough to learn how to turn off your audio.
To the Batmobile. Let's go. Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed. Roger. Ready to move out.
Well, this should be interesting without Mitch for a while.
Because this is Nerdcast.
Why is your shirt different?
I upgraded my armor.
And the upside of this one is?
Lady Resistance. Ah, second boss form!
Oh, hey there! Well, I guess you want some news, huh? Alright, let's get started then. Sony and Panasonic are making new storage disks that will supposedly be able to store between 300 gigabytes to 1 terabyte of data. For reference, dual-layer Blu-ray discs can only hold 50 gigabytes. These discs are also supposed to be water and dust resistant and will be available for professional use in 2015.
Ooh, I smell a scoop for the next console generation.
Apple is attempting to salvage their maps with iOS 8.
Really? They think they can salvage that?
Apple is also reportedly working on fitness apps and an iWatch. Google has their own geeky tech watch called the Android Wear. Motorola also unveiled some new watches of their own, and they actually look like watches, not just these blocks for your arm.
In a few years, they might actually look cool enough that I could get one.
The devs for Elder Scrolls Online believe that their content will be significant enough to justify a monthly subscription fee. While they understand that fans may be off-put at first, they claim that updates will be more than just some new hats and swords. Therefore, they're well worth the price. A retailer in the UK dropped the price of the Xbox One to equal that of the PS4. Sales of the Xbox One had already drastically increased after the release of Titanfall, and this will probably level the playing field.
Yeah, and next you're gonna tell me Canada likes Xbox better. Oh, Canada.
Xbox One has been outselling the PS4 in Canada, and it might continue to do so. Sony announced a recent price increase for all of their hardware and software. But guys, relax. It's only in Canada. I can't stress that enough.
Take that, Canada.
You really don't have to be like that, Mitch. My definitely not true fan theory is that they're going to use that extra revenue to help fund their next project. Sony is taking a page from the Oculus Rift, or really just their whole manual, and making their own VR prototype for PlayStation. To Sony's credit, they did cite the Oculus Rift for their inspiration. From what I've seen, it's going to be awesome, and then sit on my shelf and collect dust. Maybe they'll change my mind later. Who knows?
That's crazy. What are they gonna come up with next? Digital game rentals?
Actually, Sony does appear to be testing rental links for games. It looks like they might give players various rental options from 1 day to a week and even up to a month. Although, this could just be tied to the probably doomed to fail service PlayStation Now. I really just can't see that kicking off this late into the game.
At long last, the legacy of torment continues. Dark Souls 2 comes to us as the long-awaited, confidence-shredding masterpiece from Software, giving us a game designed to be more challenging and more rewarding than the original, but with some weird design choices that keep it below the bar. 2 sets us in Drenglek as a cursed undead, and you're tasked with trying to remove your curse, which 3 witches are very eager to tell you is impossible. But you're not here to get laughed at by old biddies. Before long, you pick a class, and you're off to slay the king.
And that's supposed to bring you back to life?
The Souls games are challenges through and through, including in the story department. 2 follows the first game's example by setting the player at the end of a long string of major events, and leaving the explanations to whatever the player can piece together, using item descriptions, enemy information, NPC chatter, and whatever can be inferred from the environment. Plus, it usually takes multiple playthroughs to find everything. Of course, it's all a matter of challenge. Dark Souls 2 is designed to increase the challenge level, especially for experienced players.
So what about new players?
I wouldn't worry about that. It's going to be hard for new players no matter what. Souls is like a video game Rubik's Cube. It's got a steep learning curve based on unforgiving combat. New players will have to adjust because there are no other games that try so hard to punish bad decision making. Any enemy can kill you, and most likely will, but don't give up. Once you're adjusted, Dark Souls 2 offers one of the most rewarding gaming experiences to date. Combat plays a lot like an old PS2 game, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some of you might not remember this because you didn't exist yet, but the PS2 represents a high point in video games with a long list of respected classics. Before the shooter took over mainstream gaming, the major genres were RPGs and third-person action titles. The Souls series takes the best of both and combines them into strategic, live combat, where you either play smart or you reload. 2 adds a huge positive balance change. While the original game had a wide variety of builds, there were several options such as bows and dual wielding that were so ineffective they didn't have much of a place in the overall game. Now, with a new stat system and some new mechanics, everything is viable.
But is it still hard?
Absolutely. Dark Souls is about the challenge, so new weapon options don't mean jack next to all new enemy AI. The enemies are so much harder to cope with this time around. Fans will notice that even the weaker enemies have more complex attack patterns to memorize, and many of them are now designed to specifically address the strategies that players used in the first game. The confusing thing is that these improvements to minor enemies somehow debuffed the bosses. The bosses' attack patterns are more obvious this time around, and worst of all, they don't pack the intimidation, grandeur, and personality that struck awe into fans in the first game. There's no Ornstein and Smog threatening to halt your progress. Instead, we get bosses like a giant spider, guy with 2 torsos, and a bunch of rats, which just don't carry the same significance. I also took issue with the game's new reliance on NPC chatter. Leveling up suffers, because most of it now requires you listening to 3 lines of dialogue and then a slow bowing animation every time you go to level up. Unlocking shopkeepers also requires listening to every line of dialogue until you've exhausted all dialogue options. For a game that doesn't hold your hand, it's weird that they would find ways to shackle you to their storyline. And I know this change is going to vastly alter the speedrunning community.
Speedrunning? In Dark Souls?
Yeah, that's a thing. If you know what you're doing, you can beat Dark Souls 1 in under an hour. Dark Souls 2, I'm betting not as much. This is on top of some other strange issues, like a lag time when opening the menu and awkward level designs filled with empty rooms while missing some of the character and environment the original piled so high. So, overall, there are a lot of gameplay improvements to the gaming world's most challenging franchise. But for some reason, the aspects of the game took a hit. Losing the sense of larger significance, especially in terms of the easier, unimpressive bosses, takes away from some of the general sense of accomplishment. But actually, it might be a better way to get new fans into the original game than for a fulfilling experience for old fans.
You're penalizing a game for being accessible?
Hey man, don't take my sense of accomplishment from me. That's what Dark Souls is all about. But more on that later. Until then, it's not so bad being a silver medalist. I recommend Dark Souls 2. Praise the sun.
Did you know that a certain Ray Cox IV is the Guinness World Record holder for the highest gamer score? That's right. This apparent Xbox fanboy loves gaming so much, he accumulated the most achievement points and recently broke the 1 mil milestone. Hey Mitch, what's your PlayStation trophy score?
Xbox fanboy.
Amazon's supposed controller for their speculated console has been leaked. It looks like a square version of an Xbox controller.
I hate it.
Go figure. But then again, I hate the idea of an Amazon console to begin with, so the controller is a moot point. However, the console is rumored to stream PC games, so if I can put Steam on it, I'm happy.
Wait, isn't the Steam box still being developed?
Yep, which is why Amazon doesn't have a chance of getting my money. Right now, Valve is showing off their redesigned Steam controller too. The buttons have been changed to be more along the lines with the norm,
i.e. D-pad, 4 action buttons, and ooh, shiny home button.
The overall design is unique in my opinion, especially the contour of the grips. I'm still waiting to get my hands on one of these things before I judge whether or not any of this is good or bad. So, hey Mitch, you remember that game? Octodad? Dadliest Catch?
Yeah, I reviewed the co-op game for Nerdcast a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that game. Well, it sold more than 90,000 copies, 85,000 of which would be returned to Walmart if they sold physical copies.
Yeah, they would. Wait, Walmart's taking used games now?
Yep, Walmart has decided it too wants to enter the used video game business.
Hey, Walmart, a little late, don't you think?
They will only accept usable games in their original package, and they won't take hardware such as controllers or consoles. Oh, and they only give you store credit, not real money. And if that doesn't make you feel like you've been scammed enough, check your inbox for an invite to GTA 5 PC beta email.
Wait, GTA 5 is out already.
Well, yeah, just not on PC. The email isn't real, guys, and, well, no one has actually confirmed anything about a PC version, except the fans want one. A Rick and Morty episode was released in 15-second clips on Instagram. Why even bother uploading, you ask? Well, it was put up a few days earlier than the YouTube version.
That's gotta be a pain to watch, though.
The fans won't care. Worried about cheaters and hackers in Titanfall? Well, Respawn has assured us that they've been catching them. They just have yet to enforce any rules. They do have anti-hacking measures, though. They just haven't been implemented yet.
Oh, gee, that's comforting.
Tell me about it. Seriously, they should be able to do a little bit more to help their fans out.
Hey Jess, guess what time it is?
Time for you to get a smartwatch?
Yeah, but also time for quickfire news.
All right, here we go. For a limited time, Skype has Captain America emoticons. You need the latest version to use them, though. They're also teasing a hidden emoticon. They just won't say what it is. Roller Coaster Tycoon is coming to mobile, meaning I won't play it anymore. Or at all. I don't play Roller Coaster Tycoon. Anyways, Epic Games is working on a new unannounced title, and it will not be an Xbox exclusive. Huzzah! SimCity offline mode is now available, but I still can't believe it took them this long after the initial server crashes. Finally, the Guitar Hero downloadable song catalog is going away March 31st. They're having a mini sale on the songs in the meantime, so if you want any of them, you better go buy them now. Don't worry, you can still play them after they become unavailable for purchase. And that's it for news today, guys.
So, how do you top an action movie with a pedigree of manliness, death, alternate history, and possible homosexual tendencies?
They made Top Gun 2.
What? No. No. I see where you're going with that, but no.
Well then, I'm gonna write it. Top Gun 2. Top harder.
300 Rise of an Empire is the sequel we didn't know we wanted for the movie that was already a perfect display of all things manly with a dash of child abuse. Instead of man-mode, full-ham Spartan battle porn, Rise takes us on a different journey. The focus this time is on the Athenian general Themistocles, as he leads the navy against the Persians on the other side of Greece, from where Leonidas single-handedly picked up more kills than everyone currently playing Titanfall. The big difference here is that Themistocles is much less of a barbarian warlord and more of a thinking man's Persian slayer. He actually spends his interactions with the Spartans in a semi-mocking mood, making the unstoppable Spartans
More like eventually stoppable.
They were heroes.
The Spartans may have been super soldiers for their time, but Themistocles' perspective brings attention to the idea that they brought nothing else to the table. Spartans were awesome because all they did was fight and punch children. Meanwhile, Themistocles trains an army of farmers to do basically the same thing Leonidas did, but on boats. But forget that guy. The only character worth paying attention to is this lady. This is Artemisia, the only deep, unpredictable, sympathetic character in 100 minutes of runtime. Thymastocles can bite me, because as smart and badass as he is, he's still about as one-track as characters get. Meanwhile, Eva Green's Artemisia manages to be one of the few female characters ever to be her own distinguishable person, and not a stereotype of ice queen, sexy villain, or secretly holding back tears. She's the manliest person on screen at any given moment.
Her hobbies include murdering men and...
Rise tries to match 300's spectacle, but doesn't measure up. The slow-mo action sequences that stood out in the first movie are not as prevalent, and they're bogged down by sloppy CG. For some reason, they use the blood effect from the Blade trilogy, which, as you'll remember, is the same visual effect that Ivan Ooze used in the Power Rangers movie. So basically, strawberry jam everywhere. It's pretty distracting. But blood aside, the parts that are straight up fighting work really well. The naval scenes are fun, even if you can't tell how the overall battle's playing out, but that's not a big deal. If you get lost, just wait for a character to yell out some variation of, "We're losing," and you're golden. But the best part of Rise isn't in the fighting or the imagery. It's the new message. Both the original and the current movie show a different side of what we might think of as the military attitude. The Spartans were these meat-headed monster trucks, and they reveled in fighting and killing. But the Athenians display the complete opposite attitude, and the movie takes time to show the difficulty of leading men into battle and seeing beloved friends die. It's the smarter, harder side of war that rounds out the machismo in the first movie in a way that makes this movie feel necessary to the series, not just a cash-in on an old blockbuster from 2006. So, it's a more thoughtful version of the brawny awesomeness of the original. It's still awesome, but for more mature reasons. The fighting's still good, but it's no longer the reason to go see the film. This has somehow become a thinking man's take on ancient warfare, with developed female characters, the morality of war, and added slow-mo gore that, okay, honestly, they probably took the gore too far, but this is a more progressive movie. And what can I say? We ain't in Sparta anymore.
Well, Lucas isn't here this week, so I use this summoning scroll to find additional help for words with pictures.
Because this is Nerdcast.
This is not what I paid for. American Vampire second cycle #1. Everybody loves Scott Snyder for his iconic Batman work that he's still churning out. But what you may not know is that he's invested a lot of time in his independent work as well. Most notable among those is American Vampire, which is infinitely less cheesy than the title might make it sound.
Cheesy is here, American Vampires, that, keep going.
This next phase launch lends itself to new readers, but I would honestly say, why not go back and read all that's come before? American Vampire has built an extremely rich world of characters across several decades, and this issue is starting to solidify the core mythology. The series has one of the most fascinating takes on vampire mythology, and it blends that with extraordinary characters and a wide variety of solid period pieces through American history. Bottom line, give this a shot, and if you're intrigued, go buy the rest of the series. You shall not regret it. 10 out of 10.
Well, my wallet will regret it.
Batman and Aquaman #29. This series has been in some rough waters, pun not intended, since Robin died. The 5 Stages of Grief arc was good enough, but the Two-Face arc was a bit of a mess. Now, on The Search for Robin, the series is trying something new, with a different team-up each issue across the DC Universe. So far, this approach is not working well. Aquaman's appearance here starts out somewhat logical, but then there's a weird plot element that really forces the idea of his involvement, and then the issue kind of devolves into Batman and Aquaman versus goons for the prerequisite amount of pages. It makes what little story there is feel very rushed, since it had to use the pages to set up the appearance and to set up Wonder Woman's story next issue. But beyond that, the main story with Ra's just didn't quite work for one major reason: mass whale torture. Aquaman was involved due to hearing the screaming of many whales. It turns out that Ra's uses whale wombs to grow his Damian clones, which is a plot element that does have its roots in Damian's backstory, but the horrific, inhumane image we see is something so Ra's Ungul. Ra's has always been an extreme eco-terrorist and an anti-villain. He has the best interests for the world at heart, and this generally involves ridding the planet of pesky mankind, which does a lot of damage to the planet. So to have Ra's commit such an atrocious act against nature seems so fundamentally wrong for his character, like Poison Ivy going out of her way to burn down greenhouses. It's just wrong. 4.5 out of 10. Daredevil #1. When it comes down to it, there is one and only one problem with this issue.
Something, Stephanie Brown?
And just like that, I understand Jess's constant desire to murder you. No, the only problem with this issue is that it shouldn't be a #1. Oh, sure, don't get me wrong, it's a great jumping on point, but there was no need to create a new series a month after the previous one was canceled without changing the author or even the artist. Hell, really, if there was no need to cancel it, the numbering should have continued even if the creative team changed. but the fact that it's unchanged makes it all the more baffling. But here's the bottom line. Should you still buy this issue? Hands down, absolutely. Mark Waid is still a legend, pumping out legendary work on Daredevil with Chris Samney. Now's your chance to jump aboard the Daredevil handicap train. 9 out of 10.
As many of you know, this is Lucas' segment where he catches you up on the latest anime stuff. Usually a diverse collection to show the diversity of contemporary animated storytelling. Well, I'm the Mitch, and I do things a little bit differently. So get up, break out the cosplay, and brace yourself for the revival of a longtime fan favorite.
So, business as usual?
If you're like us, then you might remember one of your first exposures to anime likely being Sailor Moon. For those vaguely, reminiscently familiar, or completely in the dark about the series,
I knew about it.
Sailor Moon was one of the 90s flagships and main staples in the anime world, which gave the medium the much-needed exposure to Western audiences, which in turn paved the way for otaku and anime fandom culture we know today. It was also a monumental show that helped to shape and redefine programming aimed at a younger audience. Not only did the show present girls in a positive light in terms of their own independence, but it also showed them as the primary protagonists who ultimately did kick butt on a daily basis.
That's nice, but what about the part of this that's new?
Keep your sailor skirt on, buddy. Now, I'm bringing this all up because Toei said in a couple of years that they'd be releasing, for lack of a better term, a new Sailor Moon anime titled Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon Crystal. And it's actually happening. It's going to be a bit of a twist from what fans might have originally been expecting. Rather than remaking the already existing 200 episodes of the show or picking up where the series left off, Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon Crystal will be essentially an adaptation from the original manga series.
But I thought that was the point of the original anime.
Anyone who watched the show and then read the manga will know that the series began to do a bit of a DBZ twist and became significantly more formulaic and drawn out as it got away from the source material. Although the show did a significantly better job in fleshing out the characters in ways that the manga couldn't, it still became a bit stagnant with the overbearing feeling of a new friend/monster of the week content generator. The manga was much more to the point and told a much richer story, where the show was essentially whitewashed in some regards. The original show and manga complemented each other well and served their purpose in the long run, but now we're looking at what appears to be a straight adaptation of the original manga without filler or mercy.
As the manga intended.
Current plans are to make the show a little bit darker and more controversial than the original, so it's probably going to be a good watch. Who knows? Maybe this will spark a whole updating craze for other iconic series, like Lupin the Third or Cowboy Bebop.
Uncanny X-Men number 19. Uncanny X-Men's been giving us a lot of filler since Battle for the Atom, but I've actually been loving the filler.
Loving it, like Stephanie Brown.
Well, it's really fleshed out the characters and given us some of the best issues of the series. But now it's time to get moving again. This issue is a great point to jump in, and it's determined to let you know. It manages to allude to all the major plot points you need to know about without feeling forced. It really is that last typical misadventure right before all hell breaks loose. The straw that breaks the Uncanny X-Men's backs. We also get to find out some of the series' long-held secrets, like the source of the mutant growth hormone and the fate of Dazzler, both of which are incredibly dark. This issue isn't just a great point to start, it's a great representation of the series on its better days. 9 out of 10. XO Man of War number 23. I haven't given enough attention to the newly reborn Valiant comics, and I deeply regret that. I've only recently finished playing catch-up, and I'm beyond glad I did. I love Image most of all, but Image isn't as consistently excellent as Valiant. Image has a lot of grade AAA titles, but it has some that are Bs and maybe a few Cs. Valiant is basically grade A all the way through. But among their best is the flagship title, XO Man of War. It's absurdly awesome, expertly plotted, and spattered with just the right amount of depth. This issue is a great place to jump in, because it's really the first time in the series that Arik has gotten into a status quo. Everything for the first 22 issues has built the man from a berserker into the king he is now. Go experience what Valiant has to offer and get XO Man of War number 23. 9 out of 10.
Due to the graphic nature of Jess and Jeremy killing Mitch, we will not be able to show you an introduction for Good, Bad, Random. So, here's Good, Bad, Random.
Good, stress relief. It doesn't matter what kind of gaming you're doing, tabletop, video games, board games, it's all a way to de-stress and unwind. Unless it's Dark Souls.
Bad. Money. Games and their expansions cost lots of it, which is really bad if you get addicted.
Random. The word Atari comes from the ancient Japanese game of Go and means you are about to be engulfed. Technically, it is the word used by a player to inform his opponent that he is about to lose, similar to check in chess.
Good. Playing with friends. Gamers love games, and they love socializing, and they especially love getting together to argue about the rules of their games. It's a unifying experience. Right, Magic the Gathering players?
Bad. Rule Nazis. Whether it's the game's programmed AI or that one person in your D&D group, the Rule Nazi has the power to turn a relaxing nerdy outing into a yelling match. Do not be that guy.
Random. A 10-day long game of Monopoly was once held in an elevator. I wonder what happened when they had to go to the bathroom.
Good. Parties. Get people together to play games. There's a game out there for everyone. And then there's some games that are for no one, like Monopoly.
Bad. That feeling you get when you finish a really good video game and you don't know what to do with your life. Or for tabletop and card gamers, that feeling you get when nobody wants to play the really awesome game you just brought with you.
Random. When Magic was first pitched as a game, it was almost given a different name. The first idea was actually called Mana Clash.
Because this... Okay, no more boss fights with Jess. Good, I couldn't really handle that right now. All this Dark Souls 2 is starting to drain on my mental stability. Let me explain what I mean. Here's philosophy of. I know my Dark Souls 2 review probably just scared off any new players, and if that applies to you, you're making a mistake. If you listen to a bunch of game critics or have hardcore gamer friends, you've probably heard about the Souls games before. Probably as a variation of, it's hard but it's good. And it is hard. But by now you must suspect that there's more to it than that. Come on, no game's good just because it's hard. We're not all crazy masochists trying to get people to whip themselves just because we're into it. But as a fanboy, I know the positive must be hard to see from the outside looking in. Ads for Dark Souls celebrate how often you're going to die, as though failing is the selling point. Nobody wants to fail, especially repeatedly for hours of their life. That's basically hell itself. Lately, video games have reflected this mentality. Modern video games are thought of as escapist tools. They're stress relief products first and foremost, and game developers are afraid to frustrate their consumers in case word of mouth causes a drop in sales. They can't have that, they use that money to eat. So they take the safe road. Make a game easy. Make the game accessible to the widest variety of players, people who just want to escape mindlessly into a fantasy world for a few hours each day. An accessible game is harmless, but it's not far removed from just watching TV. The game tells players where to go, highlights important objects. Sometimes it just flat out explains an enemy's weakness to you. It makes itself easy, beatable. The Souls games are hard. They tell you nothing. They force you to think for yourself. You learn, you plan, you make mistakes, and the game punishes you. But the big secret is this. Once you fail enough, failure stops being scary. The games sort of hint at this using story. In both games, the player is an undead, basically just a zombie. Being dead means never being able to die, which is why players can die an infinite number of times. In this world, undead lose their sanity as they regenerate. The weak-willed eventually become monsters, their sanity broken by countless deaths. And these are the enemies that litter the game world. They were just like you, but somewhere along the way they lost the will to continue. And now their only purpose is to stop you from accomplishing your goal until you're brought down to their level. This world is unforgiving and difficult. Failure crushed these creatures and they gave up. But what if every time you failed, you could get up and try again? In Dark Souls, not even death can stop you. As long as you're trying, experimenting, and throwing yourself at your goal, you will eventually succeed, no matter how impossible it seems. And it will seem. The only way to really lose is to give up, to stop trying to reach that goal. Basically, to hollow. leaving yourself to fade into a depressed insanity, standing in the way of the next person to come along with the audacity to have the will to succeed. Learning to recover from failure is not simply a game skill, it is a life skill. And Dark Souls difficulty gives you the opportunity to teach this to yourself. The farther you go, the more the game pushes you and punishes you, forcing you to adapt and incorporate what you've learned. You began as the weakest of an already dead people. But by the end of the game, you've proven yourself more capable than any other being in that world. The game teaches you how to grow. In my time with these games, I've spent hours ramming my head against the same boss, for hours. And though it was frustrating, the feeling of accomplishment when each one went down was very real. After an accomplishment, those deaths, those failures I racked up to get there became badges of honor. Those hours of dedication were a sign of mastery. We all have goals in our lives, but our world is also unforgiving. It punishes people for laziness and stupidity, and it's loaded with people who will bring you down if you let them. The Souls games might not be fun in the traditional sense, but at least in the modern sense, they are the games that teach you, or rather teach you to teach yourself. If you've beaten either Dark Souls, then you've given yourself a concrete example of what it takes to persevere through adversity and solve your own problems. So pick up a Dark Souls game. Remember to keep trying, even though it's going to be frustrating at times and seem impossible at others, but it's not. While you're playing, pay attention to yourself. Watch for that small moment when your mind switches. It'll happen right when you die. And before the game's reloaded, you'll have another plan ready, and you'll be excited to start it. Once that happens, you'll know that Dark Souls can't beat you. And if Dark Souls can't beat you, what do you have to be afraid of? We're lucky to live in a world where we can try again after every failure. Celebrate your deaths, guys, and always praise the sun.
So, did Mitch die again?
I didn't kill him this time.
Then where is he? I'm gonna go now.
What? Oh, sweet Anubis!
Weapons upgrade, circus!
Guardian. Yeah, to the top, please. Because you're in the shot. Because Tyler is in the shot. I'm smoking the L. I'm broke as hell. My attitude.
There's a recipe for this, cold hands.
Good. Stress relief. It doesn't matter what type of gaming you're doing, as long as it's. Because parentheses. Unless it's Dark Souls. Then it is hell on earth.
The 5 stages of Greek art.
There you go, there you go, there you go, there you go. Peanut butter jelly, peanut butter jelly.
Weapons upgrade, circus!